I don't hear Nathaniel. Do you all?
Nope, he's not saying
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry about that. Thank you for joining the show again today. We went through a hectic last couple of weeks. We see frontal, rear, and side attack on the Voting Rights Act. Many people in my community feels that the Voting Rights Act represented the change from a country that became a democracy in 1965. We made a lot of progress. The biggest change, of course, is that we had 57 African Americans elected to Congress. The assault on the Voting Rights Act will guarantee that it looked like we would lose at least half of those members. So we have our superstar panel today. We have some important issues to discuss with Attorney Vanita Banks, expert cybersecurity, Attorney Marlon Prime, former worked for the Department of Justice for his career, and of course, famous Milton Grimes, who represented the most consequential case of our generation, the Rodney King case. In any event, good morning, everyone. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning, everyone, and happy Mother's Day Eve to everybody in your audience, Nathaniel.
Good morning.
Well, yeah, starting with, where do we start? It's such a tragic decision in my mind. I was trying to read through this 100+ page decision, and I just couldn't, because it appeared to me, I don't understand how they collect evidence, but when you dealing with voting, in essence, the way they're redrawing maps, they're using these statistical voting patterns. You know, I was looking at that. And the reason that's important, like if you take here in Indianapolis, if you take one zip code to 46218, and it may be 90% African American, and the zip code, say, may have 60,000 persons or 80,000 in that zip code that are maybe eligible voters. But in a typical election, maybe only 10% of those folks vote, right? So when I was thinking about this panel, I was thinking that one of the ways that we overcome these draconian court decisions, particularly in Tennessee and Memphis, is that we have to get the people in our community out to vote. And therefore, these attempts to destroy democracy will fail based on the voters' participation. That's my thought process, at least.
Was there a question in that?
Yes. See, I think that the only way, I don't think we're going to get any relief with the court system. Our Supreme Court appears to become more and more partisan each day. I didn't think that they would get worse, but it seemed like they're getting worse in terms of these decisions. It's almost like we've ignored the centuries of relegation of Blacks as slaves or less than equal, or the Jim Crow laws where we had lynching, murders, and things like that. It's almost like we're trying to erase that part of American history, but it did occur in our country. And so these decisions, and then what occurred as soon as before the ink was dry on the opinion, before the ink was dry, the Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi immediately start redrawing maps, or already had them in place, to dilute representation. And I was listening to Tennessee, they only have one Black elected official, and they want to get rid of that one. In the grand scheme of thing, I guess they would take, I've not seen the actual map, but I guess they would take 2, 3, or 4 different divisions in the city of Memphis. And so you take Memphis, and a person can be living across the street from you, in theory, and you could have neighbors voting in 2 or 3 separate congressional districts. It's an insane way to run a democracy, but that's what we're relegated to, it appears, at this moment in time.
Attorney Lee, as you know, in virtually every single show that we air, we emphasize the importance of voting. Back to your point, millions of voters, eligible voters, are sitting on the side, not participating in our democracy. And at the end of the day, and we've been here before, this is just the latest reiteration, attack on our democracy and fundamental right to vote. And this latest Calais decision, which strikes down the
Race.
the congressional maps in Louisiana, where there were two majority black districts and they were declared to be unconstitutional, is the latest blow to the 1965 Voters' Right Act, Section 2, which, as you know, prohibits discriminatory voting practices. And that section allowed for the creation of majority minority congressional districts like the two majority black districts in Louisiana. But with this 6-3 ruling on April 29th in the Louisiana versus Calais case, the court's six Republican appointees ruled that the Louisiana second majority district is an unconstitutional racial gerrymand. And the effect of this ruling is that Louisiana and other states no longer can ensure that minority communities will be represented, not only in the U.S. Congress, but in state legislatures across the country, city councils, school boards. This truly is the latest attempt to gut the Voting Rights Act, but we've been here before after the Civil War with Reconstruction and Jim Crow. And one of the biggest reasons, I think the primary reason for these attacks on the Voting Rights Act and basic civil rights is because we are winning, Attorney Lee and Grimes and Primes. We have currently, historically, the greatest number of African American representatives in the U.S. Congress at 60. But all of that progress is at risk at this point. And I'm sure we'll talk about the impact of the case, but there's a lot that we can do, including and most importantly, voting to address this devastating decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it was just it's just astounding on a number of different fronts in terms of what is being done. I think, Nathaniel, your audience needs to really understand, the history behind the Voting Rights Act. It was called the crown jewel of the civil rights movement. It was passed following the March on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where the world saw just African Americans being beaten, including Martin Luther King and future Congressman John Lewis, for no reason other than they wanted to vote. And, at that time, there were whole counties in the United States, think about that had significant Black populations where no one was registered to vote, because there were a series of, rules, regulations that appeared on its face to be race neutral, but the impact was that it prohibited African Americans from voting, such as grandfather clauses, poll taxes. This is what the legislation was designed to address. Now, there's a great interview that your audience, Nathaniel, should take a heed of and listen to, and I really recommend. It's Cheryl Eiffel, who's a Howard Law professor and former with a number of civil rights organizations, and she indicates that before the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights, the Voting Rights Act, there were 72 African American officials elected around the country And so, the whole point of the Voting Rights Act is to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to participate in democracy and get rid of some of these schemes. So, one of the things that your audience should really understand is that there's a lot of hypocrisy with the Supreme Court on this decision. First, they gutted Section 5, which had the pre-clearance in selected states that had a history of racism against African Americans. That was eradicated. And Chief Justice John Roberts indicated, well, in his opinion, well, hey, we still have Section 2, and that's nationwide, to kind of mollify those that were opposed to his decision. And then we come back all these years later, and now, Section 2 has been gutted in terms of the Voting Rights Act. And the thing your audience should understand, it's a lot of hypocrisy, because when John Roberts worked for the Reagan administration as a young attorney in the Department of Justice, he was behind the push as it relates to not having legislation that Congress eventually passed in the early 1980s that indicated that intentional discrimination did not have to be proven as it relates to the Voting Rights Act, because they understood that a number of these rules were race neutral on their face, but they had a disastrous impact. He lost that fight, and it got passed by Congress, and it's been a crusade for the decades later to eradicate the Voting Rights Act, and that's where we're at. So I say that to suggest that you have a court that's indicated that, hey, we're strict constructionists, we're not legislating from the bench, but this is exactly what has been done. It couldn't have been clearer in terms of Congress's intent in the early 1980s. They said you do not have to prove intentional discrimination because of the history that I described, but yet this decision ignores the will of Congress. So, we really have to hold them accountable. We have to educate people, and we have to really think about Supreme Court reform as well.
Yeah, I'm glad my two colleagues are well versed on the Voter Rights Act as it pertains to our national government. I have worked on cases here in California under the California Voters' Rights Act, enacted in 2002, believe it or not. And we have filed lawsuits against 8 different cities here in Southern California, and were victorious in all of them, establishing that there was polarized voting and disenfranchisement of minority communities in the way the at-large elections were drawn up and set up. At-large elections, as you well know, was the system that was set up after the Civil War to make sure that Blacks were disenfranchised and did not have effective votes, even if they went to the polls, which was rare. But here we have a case pending. Santa Monica is I'm sure all of you are familiar with the city of Santa Monica. We sued the city of Santa Monica for its at-large voting system, which we proved that they didn't have any minority, only one minority official in the whole history of the city on the city council, and that was a Latino, because the community of Black people couldn't get enough representatives to be elected, because they could not compete with the white candidates on running for those offices. So we argued and showed that historically Santa Monica had a lot of racism. They only had one Black police officer up into the 70s. They had a little area of the beach, of 5 Mile Beach, where only Blacks and Latinos could come at one block. They could not come to the whole beach. So it was discriminatory. It was a discriminatory system. So we won that lawsuit. It is now pending before strike that. We won the lawsuit, went up on appeal. The Court of Appeal reverses, went to the Supreme Court here in California, and they reversed it back to the trial court. So we're looking at having to try this daggone case again in October to show that there was racial discrimination and that a large election system does not give representation to the minority community. The city had agreed to carve out districts in the city of Santa Monica. And because there was a significant amount of minorities in the Pico area district that was, I could go on and on about the history of this racism in this city. But the Pico district was a district where they would park their vehicles, where the freeway came in and they displaced 2,500 families, a whole slew of violations of health codes in that neighborhood. But they essentially displaced that neighborhood, cut the minority population down, and justified it with that was the proper location for the freeway. Well, they didn't do that in white neighborhoods throughout the country. You can study that and see that. So here we have, bottom line, is a law that recognizes that with at-large elections, you seldom will get a minority representative. So where you have counties with a significant minority population, the law says that if it's a recognized population, they are entitled to representation on your city council and your school boards, etc. And district elections would be the fair way to go. And in all 8 cases, we proved or we settled 4 of them. We went to trial on 4 and won. But I'm afraid that this Supreme Court decision that said race cannot be considered is going to set our law back here in the state of California, especially in my neighborhood.
Well, one of the problems I have though with your California, you do so-called jungle primaries. And so I don't understand the logic behind this process. In other words, you have 2 Republicans running and there's like 200 Democrats, maybe more, running for governor. Then the 2 Republicans collectively look like they're going to get about 30% of the vote, or maybe slightly less. But the problem is you have all the Democrats running, diluting the vote, and you run the risk that the Republican, one of them, could win the jungle primary, even though they may end up getting 20% of the vote.
You call it the jungle primary? First time I've heard that phrase.
That's what they say on the national broadcast. I don't know whether the adjective can correctly describe what I'm seeing play out there in California. I see that your Attorney General hopped into the race, and so we got the country's largest state and one of the biggest top 10 economies on the planet, and you could have a governor who is elected by less than 20% of the people. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
But let's go to the phone, sir. You have a question or comment? Imhotep, you had a question or comment for today, sir. Go ahead.
Grand Rising, good morning, all you great people, and thank you for taking my call. That is a heck of an adjective to describe what's going on. I'm keeping up with that out there in California, and it is kind of strange. Attorney Grimes, all the times I've visited California. California is pushed as this bastion of liberalism, and this, you got pockets out there in many places where it's contrary, as you know. Couple of comments here. We all decried the Supreme Court decision, the Virginia Supreme Court decision the other day. I learned more out of college than I did in college. I went to HBCU, Lincoln University, for 1 year, and then I went to Purdue Northwest in Hammond for the subsequent time. And so, you learn a lot from HBCU. I got both experience. So you learn a lot from HBCU, and then you go to a PWI, and it's basically straight line thinking, linear thinking, and we don't give you European authors and European books and European this and European that, and then if you don't watch yourself, you come out being black in skin and white in mindset. And so when I'm saying that to say, once I got out of school, that's when I began to learn, because I started being taught by the late, great Dr. Francis Quest Weldon, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. John Henry Clark, all about Dr. Leonard Jeffries, and still with us. Sister Soldier, I was on the panel with back in the 90s, a great sister. She kind of tore down Cornel West back then, if you look at the video, and he kind of played her cheap, and she kind of got in his butt. But I say that to say Dr. Amos Wilson, one of his most powerful lectures, says you do not have any power without economics. Economics is the root of the tree of power. Voting is a fifth of instrument in, or I would say the tentacle to come off of that root that helps that tree. The only thing this place understands, can I finish? The only thing this place understands is money. That's all it understands. Okay. And I don't know about us winning, because I can go back to Democratic presidents and Democratic legislators. I mean, I got a Democratic council and a Democratic mayor here in Indianapolis, and we're all not happy with what they're doing. But I can go back to Democratic mayors, maybe not Carter, president, but definitely with Clinton, even under Obama, and we still got qualified immunity. And we still have police killing black people like crazy, and we unarmed black people, and we still got negative stuff. Remember, the Welfare Reform Act was done under Clinton. Okay, period. So, you know, we have got to use economics. Tennessee, what they did the other day, but wiping out Memphis. My grandmother's side of the family is having a reunion in Knoxville in the second week of July. Well, I hadn't paid my money yet, but I'm not going. Our family is angry because they've already paid money to get the hotel and the hall and stuff like that. If that wasn't the case, no one would be going. We have got to use economics. That's only understand money. And if black people, we will not boycott. The LGBT community, if you smack them around, they're going to pull that money. They're not playing with you. They're going to pull it. That's all they understand. So while we have all this going on, we need to have a concerted plan to have targeted boycotts against all these states. Ryan Clark, a large ex-player, but a large figure on ESPN, came out yesterday. Now he's calling on the athletes to quit going to the various schools in these states that's disenfranchising black people. Well, we know the athletes of the day take away LeBron and maybe Steph Curry and a few of them. Some of the women, the WNBA the women are fantastic. Asia Wilson, I think the young lady that got traded from Chicago to Atlanta, she just came out talking about it the other day. They have no fear, the women do. I am so happy with the sisters. I have no problem with it. But the Stephen A. Smith and a lot of the brothers, you know, it's something wrong with some of us brothers. But we got to get a concerted effort to economically hurt these people. Because if you do that, then they have to straighten up, because once that pocketbook gets taken care of, then those big silent and big donors that you don't see, because remember, the unseen rules the scene. Donald Trump is that loudmouth figurehead, but the guy that went to school and took African-American history and got a PhD in African-American history that helped author the Project 2025, he's the one we got to get out, and others like that. So that's what I wanted to say, man. I've never missed a vote, and I understand what voting means, but we have got to pair economics. We've got to understand the economic power, and if we don't use that power, we're going to continue this. We're still fighting the same fight, and it's 2026. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you. Hey, on that note, too, I forgot to ask Attorney Prime, I forgot about something. You had a big election in Ohio, and you have the wealthy nutcase guy look like going to be the Republican nominee for governor in Ohio.
Yes, Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president, came out of nowhere and basically cleared the entire Republican field. Our state attorney general was vying to be governor, and after President Trump, did not endorse him and endorsed Vivek Ramaswamy instead. He pulled out, and basically the race was cleared. So yes, Vivek has won the Republican nomination. He will go in the general election against Amy Acton, who was the health director during COVID and in Ohio, and helped usher us through that period of time. So it should be very interesting. One of the things that your listeners should note is that Vivek has a pretty controversial proposal. He couches it in, closing underperforming colleges. And one of those colleges that he's proposing to close is our only historically Black college, Central State University. So, I mean, that would certainly be devastating, not only for people in Ohio, but people in Indiana, your state, Nathaniel, and nearby states. And in fact, there are people around the country that come to Central State and so many HBCUs. And so, we're hopeful that word will get out as it relates to some of the proposals, and that people will get educated and vote accordingly. But I hope, people really sound the alarm bell about the importance not only of Central State, but he's talking about closing other schools such as Cleveland State, Akron, and other universities, which I think would be problematic because it just gives access to people that perhaps can't go to our flagship university, Ohio State or Ohio University, where I went, or other schools that may be further away. So it's something that we really need to be cognizant of and really make sure that people are educated about, those that are seeking to be elected.
Well, the
Attorney
great
Bond,
news, though, Attorney Banks, in Illinois, we have a superstar candidate in the Senate race.
absolutely. We have current Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, who won her statewide election during our primary March 17th. And so it is probable that she will become the sixth African American woman to serve in the United States Senate. So we're very happy about her campaign. And she ran on a campaign platform of give the people what they want, and she um, leveraged the fact that people want a fighter in the US Senate. And so her message resonated with voters across the state of Illinois. And we're very, very excited about her candidacy.
Hey, Milton, in your state, this jungle primary, our listener want you to try to convince Katie Porter to drop out the race. That's not going to happen.
Nah, not with what I know.
Well, she's polling at 10%, and the problem is Becerra, your Attorney General, I looked at today's poll, he's leading, and then the Republican second, and the Democrat third, and it's a very close race with the top four candidates, two Republican, two Democrats. But the problem is that they've spent a lot of money on that, and you still have a probability that you could have two Republicans come out of your jungle primary in California.
Yeah. What does he suggest we tell Katie Porter to do? I mean, and why should she drop out since she does have a chance?
Well, Renee thinks that she said Katie Porter and the school teacher need to drop out. I'm not really sure which one is the school teacher. Renee got to call in and let us know what she's talking about because there's so many races going on. It's hard to keep track of them, But in our state, we just had our election, and we had a very contested race in our 7th congressional district. Our sole African American congressional person. We had a person who lives outside of Indianapolis, I guess moved to Indianapolis, running against them, and had spent a lot of money. And she had some interesting attack ads against our Congressman Carson. She was, her attack is he was receiving corporate money from BlackRock, from these different entities, right? And I was thinking to myself, okay, where are you getting your money from? Does she get it from some of her friends in Martinsville, who has a pretty bad history in America as it relates to Jim Crow and things like that, or what, So, and now in Indianapolis, and I'll get on the phone with one of the calls in a second, we have candidates already running for mayor now for election that's going to be in 2017. So it's almost like these candidates forgetting about the fact that we have an uphill battle in our state. When Attorney Prime was talking about the Central State in Ohio, we only had one Black college in Indiana, Martin's University here in Indianapolis, and they went out of business. The governor refused to give them their $5 million payment this year and next year, and they ran out of money. And so we see a frontal assault on these institutions all over the country. So we have to do what we can to make sure they survive. So,
Absolutely. And I wanted to speak to that issue, and I wanted to ask Marlon about, what is considered to be, quote, underperforming. And then you referenced Martin University, Attorney Lee, $5 million in the overall scheme of things is no money. And my question is, we need a strategy whereby our leveraging our economic power, back to our caller's point, our $2 trillion economic power, to ensure that these universities and colleges are fully funded by, first, I would think, Black billionaires across this nation and others, and taking a look at these universities now holistically to determine which of them, through endowments, can continue to thrive and fulfill their historic purpose. We know that many lawyers and doctors and other professionals have been educated at HBCUs. And so, again, instead of waiting for the governor to fund Martin University at $5 million, how can we assemble a group of affluent people to fund these universities and colleges that have a potential of thriving is my question. And that would include sports athletes as well.
Bernita, I don't know the economic position of most of our historical Black colleges, but I would wager that they depend upon the federal government for much of their funding as opposed to endowments. I mean, do you know the difference?
Well, they do, but I'm saying that can change because in our community, with respect to our billionaires, our athletes, and other affluent individuals and professionals, we can we can take it upon ourselves to endow our universities as opposed to being reliant on the federal government, because we know that those funds are no longer going to be there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you that we do need to spend more on our historically Black colleges, even those that aren't alumni. I mean, those are the bedrock of our community. There have been so many first people that have graduated from HBCUs. In fact, statistically, you'll see more professionals, whether it be dentists, doctors, pharmacists, come from HBCUs. So, I think it's important for us to support it, but, that's no replacement, for federal government support. For example, making sure that, there can be, grants and loans. I mean, the government, through a stroke of a pen, can basically indicate that, hey, the students are ineligible for, getting loans and things of that sort. And that could also shut down a university. So I think it should be a partnership because, when someone's in the community, students are in the community and they get a degree, that benefits the community. When corporations look to move to communities, they look at, what is the percentage of people that have college degrees? So there's a lot of benefits. Now, going to your question, Attorney Banks, as it relates to, what the definition for the VEC closing, proposing to close Central State along with University of Akron, Cleveland State, and Kent State. These are schools that they may not have, be in the 90th percentile in terms of SAT, ACT scores. But the challenge is that we need those universities because, those of us that have been part of the interview process for students going to, some of our more elite universities know that, they're basing it on someone's grades when they're in ninth grade. They're 14 years old. So what if, their parents are divorced? What if they're extenuating circumstances? What if you're like LeBron James, where you move multiple times? So these schools are important because a student may be just as qualified to go to some of our more elite universities, but through no fault of their own, there are circumstances where they had a lower GPA. So we need universities. They're going to, take, all those that come and give them an opportunity to at least prove themselves on in the classroom. And if we're cutting out that avenue, I think it's going to be a loss for society at large. So if we say, hey, everybody only has a 3.0 or 3.5, that's the only school, that's the only people that are worthy, I think you're going to miss a lot of people that through no fault of their own may have, various issues at home, and they're entirely capable of going to a flagship university, but they may not have the scores. They may not have the resources to take an ACT or SAT prep course. They may not have advanced courses at their particular high school, which many of our schools in our urban centers do not have. So, I think it would be a problem, not only closing Central State, but also Akron, Kent, which are great, or Cleveland State. It would be a great mistake in my view.
We have a caller that's waiting. We have a caller.
Pierre, Pierre, and also we have Renee. Go ahead, Pierre. You got a question coming for us. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well?
Loud and clear, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, real quickly. We had, like our elections that we just had here, a number of third party or a number of people who knew that they didn't have a chance at winning the election or had a very slim possibility at winning the election was in the race, and they kept the a person who had a better chance at winning from winning. Like, you have Ryan Mears on here all the time. And, Milton, that's Nate's our prosecutor here. He was backing this lady named Lopez Owens. Well, we had a dead candidate who was on the ballot, who garnered enough votes, who actually kept her from winning. Had he not been in the race, she would have won. And this goes to the thing with Katie Porter out there in California. Milton and the other super delegates out there, they need to let her know that, hey, you guys are screwing up the race, and if you don't get out, they need to get Trump on her, like he did with the 5 state legislators here who lost their bids because they went against him on the redistricting thing, and most of his back candidates won. So, Milton, you and the California Democrats and the leadership out there, y'all need to tighten some of these people up, within the party. The other thing I wanted to say, Nate, was I wanted to address Attorney Prime's comment in the talk on YouTube. No, I don't think we need a constitutional convention right now, and I really don't think we need term limits, but it might be good for term limited judges on the federal side, maybe 30 years or something like that, because some of them stay on the bench far too long. And I'll just say this real quick, and Nate follows some of my stuff. I got a case now, that an age discrimination case, that I'm going to have to take to the Seventh Circuit, which is a pretty vicious appellate court. And I got a situation here where I believe the magistrate was actually helping the defendant. And that big law firm out there from California, Littler. They come from John Burris's area up there in San Francisco and Oakland. Some vicious people, and they do all kinds of things. So, yeah, I don't know. That's just we need to get more smart with how we run these elections, and it's just going to come down to. The other thing is, we don't hear anything from our superstars, people that can actually move people. They're not saying anything. They're not getting involved. And, they could be helping us out, but they're more concerned about, and I kind of understand that, their paycheck. I get that, but some of them could do more to help us out. But that's all I had for today. But I just wanted to bring those things in. We wouldn't be in this position had we not lost that 2016 election. And I don't know if you know her or not, Attorney Primes. Michelle Alexander in her book came out just before that election, and that showed a lot of support for Clinton and sent us down this road. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. And next up, Renee, you want to explain what you meant? Go ahead. Hello, Renee.
Yes, hi. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. What did you mean by that comment? Go ahead.
Well, with Katie Porter, unfortunately for women, we have to not only be smart and talented, we have to be likable. Right. Katie Porter is not likable. She's just not a likable person. And the reason why is because of all the things that came out when she thought she was hiding, how she treated her staff. And so I think, unfortunately for her, that happened doesn't make women look strong. And to the public, it makes women look mean and just not nice people. And that's unfortunate. That's some of what they did to Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election is they made her look mean and strong, even though she was not a mean person. Same thing they did to Klobuchar when she was running for president in 2020. Well, they made her look like, well, she had her use the comb to eat because her staffer forgot to get a fork for lunch or something. And that's unfortunate for us that we can't be caught in that moment. But also, I haven't seen Katie Porter over, single digits. There might be a poll with her at 10%, but most of them have been single digits. As for the school teacher, I can't think of his name, but he did a great job with his district, but he looks like and I think he's a likable guy. I like him. He seems like he would do okay, but he doesn't have the experience. And I think, maybe he should run for mayor of his district, his town. That might be his lane for now. And the guy that is Hilton, who is not even American, who came over when he was like 30-something years old, I'm not sure he should be running California. This is my thought, but I'm not going to be the one making that decision. It's going to be Californians. So that's what I meant by the comments that I made.
One additional question, Renee. How's your mayor doing there in New York City?
Oh, he's doing great. Now, he's pissed off the billionaires because of the pied-à-terre taxes that he's imposing. But nobody cares about the billionaires anymore. There's 1% of them. We can care less. The guy can sell his property if he wants to, if he doesn't want to be in New York. But a $500 million property. I think it's $500 million property. Nobody's going to buy that right away. Or there's going to be plenty of people who want to buy that and don't care about the pied-à-terre tax. So this guy is just talking a lot of crap. But Mayor Mondami is just like, he is what a city that is struggling needs. He tries his darndest to keep his promises and to do extra. He participates with the people of the city in different activities, and people see him out there. He's not just sitting back, taking trips and going on cruises or whatever. So he's doing great. Thanks for asking.
Speaking of mayors, Attorney Grimes, what's your perspective on the Los Angeles mayoral race, including incumbent Mayor Karen Bass and reality TV star Spencer Pratt.
Well, I don't know that the latest endorsement of Kamala Harris helps Mayor Bass or not with the minority population out here, Vanita. I guess only time will tell. But speaking of Katie Porter, Elizabeth Warren, on a serious note, probably Nate would be the best person to ask Katie Porter to step out of the election since she came out and endorsed her, right? Uh, I would think people of that level would have a better shot at it if you're serious about Katie Porter withdrawing from being a candidate. So, but getting back to your question, Miss Vanita, um, I like Bass personally. I haven't, because of my circumstances, I haven't not followed her in the last year or so to that detail, but I still think she does what she thinks is best for the citizens of the city of Los Angeles. So hoping that she will win. I don't know.
How does the poll numbers look?
Vanita, you would know that better than I do because I don't keep up with them.
I didn't look at the poll numbers specifically. I looked at the numbers coming out of the last debate, and Mayor Bass was polling second in accordance with the poll that I looked at.
Yeah,
And that may have been with respect to who won the debate. I think it was this particular poll that I looked at suggested that Mr. Pratt had won the debate by a sizable number.
I don't know if there's
Attorneys, I have one last. Attorneys, I'm sorry, I'm going to hang up. I have one last question. What do you guys think about the prospects of Virginia just filed an appeal? Tennessee just filed a lawsuit to stay against the state legislature. And I'm going to hang up. I just want to know what your thoughts on that and how that might work. Thank you.
Yes, as of this month, the NAACP, Tennessee State Conference, and several Democratic voters and candidates have filed lawsuits to block the new congressional map enacted in Tennessee by Tennessee Republicans. And that map would break up Memphis's longtime majority black district into three Republican leaning districts, which again supports, and we haven't talked about it today, a innovation of proportional voting as opposed to district voting. But these lawsuits, they challenge the mid-decade redistricting, typically and in accordance with the Constitution of the state of Tennessee as well as Florida. Redistricting at this time violates state law and the state constitutions, and therefore are illegal and should not be taking place at this time. Mid redistricting, which only maps can only be drawn or redrawn during a 10-year census. And we're in the middle of that at this point. So these lawsuits are being filed, and I think they're based on strong arguments that, for example, Tennessee law prohibits changing a congressional district between the decennial census. And that's why it's important that everybody learn the election laws of your state and what options we have to challenge these partisan redistricting attempts and attacks that are taking place at this time. And I think maybe, I don't know, Attorney Primes, if you referenced this in our pre-call discussions or during the call, but we've got to make sure that we get accurate information out regarding the impact of this latest decision because this information is not being shared abundantly across media challenges and media channels. And so we must make sure that, we get the word out regarding the potential impact of this latest Supreme Court decision gutting the Voting Rights Act, and that it's critical that we must turn out the vote in these midterms, and that mass mobilization is imperative. We've got to make a statement like was made in Hungary with the Viktor Orban election.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely.
Yeah, Attorney Prime, you've been following that election, haven't you?
Yes, I mean that was really unusual, and your audience, Nathaniel, should know that a lot of what we saw from Project 2025 came from some of the things that were being done in Hungary. In fact, an organization called CPAC, Conservative Political Action Committee, had one of their annual meetings in Hungary, and when it looked as though Viktor Orban was going to lose, the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, went to Hungary to campaign for Viktor Orban, and the population in Hungary, rose above those rigged elections and were able to vote Orban out of power. So similarly, I think Vanita and Milton and you are absolutely right. It's just really imperative that we exercise our right to vote, know these new voting rules. There's a lot of gamesmanship, but I think it's important that, on the church level, on the local level, we're organizing, letting people know the proper place to vote, where to vote, and candidates are going to be in favor of our interest.
Well, the key, folks, to success at the election, particularly this November, is going to be voter participation from our neighborhoods, our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, the sick, people in nursing home, people in hospital, people who've been in jail, they got out of jail, they get their rights restored the same day. So we're going to be counting on each and every one of you, particularly our listener audience, to make sure you call at least 10 folks to get them out to vote. Because in our state, for example, our governor is off the rails. It's a direct attack on the rights of African-American citizens. He campaigned vigorously once he was elected to get rid of DEI. And so now, to make matters worse, he's been taking funding away from things that beneficial to the Black community. And so the only good thing about our governor, folks, is that his poll numbers are the lowest of any governor that I've seen since I've lived in Indiana. I think he's polling around 25%, which means that we have a good chance to beat this governor in the 2028 election. But now we have the 2026 election, and our number one focus has got to be on the House and the Senate. We have to make sure that we get everyone out to vote in those elections and try to make have a better outcome. But the other issue that came up, let me see. What I don't understand is that we have a false economy now. I don't know whether anybody's been following this. The stock market went crazy this week and went way up. I watched my investments substantially increase, but it doesn't make any sense to me. We have a sluggish economy where people on their credit cards now are largely overdrawn. We have people behind on their mortgage payments. You can't afford to fill your car with gas. It costs $100 here in our state to get a tank of gas. In California, it'd probably take a mortgage payment to get a tank of gas out there, Milton. I see that your gas is up to $6 a gallon. I mean, Mike, is that right? Is that what your gas is now?
I walk everywhere I go, so I don't know.
Man, hey, or catch the bus or public transportation, because I mean, it's unaffordable to buy gas out there. When we had seminars out there back in February,
It's bad.
before the war, the gas was over $5 a gallon out there. And so my concern, particular audience, I don't understand our economy now. It doesn't make any sense to me. What I mean is prices of things are skyrocketing. Energy costs has escalated. They're not paying more on jobs, and a lot of the major corporations are laying off. And I don't believe the unemployment rate is just 4.3%. I saw that number came out yesterday. I don't believe that. What I see in our community, I see a lot more than 4.3% of people unable to work right now. Seems like me more like 7 or 8%.
Nate, I hate to cut you off. You finish?
Yes, sir.
I accidentally stumbled across the Met ball the other morning when I woke up, and I saw all of these glamorous, many of them African-American people walking with wealth dripping from everywhere on their existence. So I can imagine, my takeaway was, shoot, we're doing quite well here in this country. We are the most wealthiest country in the world, and Black people are living good. So I don't know. We got one portrayal of this country conflicting with another. So I don't know if people realize what we are facing here, Nate.
What's a tale of two cities, in terms of our community? There are, individuals that are doing well, but, to Nathaniel's point is that there are a lot that aren't. There's a lot of people in our community that depend upon public transportation that really struggle to fill up a gas tank. If you look at some of our brothers in, Asian countries, I mean, they're telling people not to come to work because of the fact that gas prices are so high, and that could potentially happen in our country as well. So it's something that we really need to be cognizant of. And finally, this administration at the beginning basically tried to eradicate a lot of the rules regarding gas mileage, regarding alternative energy, electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. A lot of that has been cast to the wayside, and that's detrimental to our general population, in my view. I was one of those that did get a hybrid, and I'm so glad that I did. But a lot of people were discouraged to do so, and a lot of manufacturers saying what the Trump administration did kind of reversed course. So I think that's certainly a detriment to us.
One final comment: what I don't understand, I do not understand our stock market now. The system that we have now doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why the stock market is going up. I understand in the petroleum industry and the defense that those stocks should be sky high because, fuel costs have doubled. And so, of course, that sector of the economy should be doing great. But the other sectors aren't. In other words, we saw airline go bankrupt and out of business, and abruptly all those jobs are open. All these passengers are stranded all over the country. And on the other hand, I can understand petroleum industry, right? But the stock market make no sense to me. I know we have AI now that's moving things along, but those companies are not making profits now. And so, it seemed like to me that we're headed to a crash in our economy. And I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but it just seemed like to me that we have a false economy right now because the economic substance of the economy is based on false evidence in my mind. And I don't believe those unemployment numbers. I see a lot more suffering in our community. People I see every day are suffering. After they took away the credits for the Affordable Care Act in terms of the Patient Protection and Inflation Reduction Act that subsidize your health insurance, I see a lot of other people can't afford health insurance now, which means they delay medical treatment and things. But in any event, we have to take this up next week because I got to find an answer as to why this economy. So we're going to be off on May the 30th is our next day off, and that's Memorial Day weekend, and then Juneteenth, the weekend of June the 21st for our listening audience. But I thank everyone for listening today, and thank you, my superstar panel.
Hey, happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Everybody have a great weekend. And